Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Oh, goodness. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning. Happy Friday.
It's Friday.
I pause the days have been running together and I look up and man, it's Friday. I still got stuff to do.
I know. We had this conversation this morning and he's like, hey, can we do a sync and make sure that we get some of these objectives?
Let's check some stuff off the list. Let's check more stuff off the list.
There's been progress.
Right? Yeah.
But
yeah.
yes.
Something that is more tangible.
It feels good. And there's something more to celebrate when you do that.
So, something to watch with Michelle and me. We are kind of living in this precarious place between, bootstrapping and kind of working in our business.
Just right there.
We're shifting into working on the business. And it's been an interesting thing. It feels like we were in a hurry up and wait mode for a long time. And now things are starting to really kick in gear and move quickly.
And,
so we're lucky
people are just kind of falling in our laps.
Yeah, we're having some
cool.
really great partnerships come together and the opportunity to kind of bring in a strong team and make this thing happen.
So I have to, personal stuff. I have to.
Oh, you got stuff?
So, this is for all, everyone out there in listening land that is married and all of that.
Oh, no. Is this going to be about me? Oh, no. Wait a minute. Let me find the mute button. Let me find that mute button.
No, it's not. I get this message from my aunt earlier this week, and she goes, "Hey, I have 2 tickets for this thing, and it's okay. You have to know me. I grew up on the Carpenters. I had the greatest hits. I knew every song, every word, fit my voice perfectly. My brother and I would just we'd sing along when we were, my brother and I, weird when we were teenagers. We were really good friends. And so Carpenters. And so there's a cover band for the Carpenters that's happening tonight. And so she's like, I have 2 tickets. She doesn't drive at night. You can have them. You can invite me or your mom or Aunt Susie, who's, my mom and her sister, or whatever. And I said, well, why don't we all go? And Jim would like to go too. So Jim has me and my mom and 2 of my aunts, and he's got a
carload of girls.
We're going to a concert.
Yeah, this wasn't the way I envisioned
it wasn't.
I was a kid,
So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun. I'll report on it Wednesday, but I just know that I'll be singing no other.
Yeah, of course.
I love the Carpenters.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Shall we? Oh, one other quick announcement. We've got next Wednesday, we're going to bring another F word to the morning show.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about
the other
fear.
Dreaded F word.
So we already covered the thing about failure. And, fear is something that we talk about in this industry. Fear between dealers. Dealers fear the consumer. Consumers fear the dealer.
Dealers fear other dealers.
They do. And there's just lots of layers to that.
Yeah.
So, we'll tackle that on Wednesday. So look forward to having folks join us on next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. We're going to bring in our
Mr.
guest.
Alan Keate.
And good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
You're joining us from Austin area, right?
Yes. We're going to start sweating here.
Sure. It's not long. That's right.
Not too long. And Jim's been working with Alan on a couple of things for the last few weeks. And I met Alan I think.
I want to hear this story.
Yeah. Well, and I'm pretty sure that we met at a conference, and then we were coming through Austin, and we were talking about a bunch. And so, Alan just so graciously let us use one of their offices to do a lot of recording for the Institute and all of that. And we got a chance to get to know him and the team. And Alan is he's got some really, really cool trophies.
Oh yeah.
In his office.
Hunter.
Alan is a big game hunter, and it's just okay, that's really cool. And what I learned about Alan is Alan is a data nerd like my husband. They can geek out over spreadsheets like no other. And for people that find that attractive like I do, it's just like, this is so heavenly. I love it.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's pretty nerdy stuff. But Alan's
my wife is not as impressed as Michelle, Jim.
Yeah, no, I feel you. So Alan has very sophisticated tools for analysis. I'm over here working on Microsoft spreadsheets. So I too was really thrilled to see what Alan was going into. And of course, it was fun to spend some time with him because a lot of folks know Alan. He has been around the segment for a good while, been around the brick and mortar side for a bit, was a bulk buyer, for a time. And so has managed that side of the buy here, pay here space. And he's got a bit of a story, which he tells more. Alan will be a recurring featured guest on this BHPH Market Watch that we kicked off, which we've actually recorded one, got it in production now. So folks can expect to see the BHPH Market Watch. Right. And this conversation kind of ties in, Alan. Like today, we're going to talk about inventory and kind of what AI tells us the outlook for inventory is. And as I was sharing with you before we started the broadcast, that we had our first V8 meeting last night for the month of April, and there was a lot of discussion in there amongst the members around capital and kind of, feeling some pinches here and there, some of them. And so I think this is timely for us to kind of, kick off this Market Watch thing and also be able to kind of monitor what's happening. Kind of starts with inventory, right? And so I think the outlook for cost of inventory for these dealers is going to be a significant factor. And then obviously we're going to be watching to see how these lenders in the space are adjusting, and kind of they're out there making their own predictions and making their own decisions about their business based on the outlook for the industry. So it's just an interesting time I feel like we're in. And
well, it's the Wild West. Pew, pew, pew. I mean, it's just there's a lot of stuff that's happening.
I suppose. I mean,
it is. It is.
I like the pew pew.
Yeah, that was a nice ad. Michelle does sound effects. It's part of the fun.
The more time you spend with me, the more you're going to be like, she's weird. Yeah. You do nerdy data stuff. I do sound effects. Okay.
Hey, we're all weird. We're all cool. It's
good. It's all get along. A lot of weirdness over here.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that's going to be interesting is it just feels important. It feels timely for us to be kind of tracking on an ongoing basis. You can get paralysis of analysis around this stuff, and there's a whole lot of stuff that is not knowable, as we learned from that. We learned that word from what was his name? I forgot the name. Yeah. Former Defense Secretary under Bush.
Not
anyway,
knowable.
Yeah, things that were not knowable. Anyway, the idea that there's just a lot of stuff that we're all working through it together, but trying to kind of anticipate, the demand in this space and kind of where the capital is going to come from. And so this is obviously an area where you have lived. And those who don't know, Alan came from a background of being a financial analyst and worked in kind of the stock market side of things. You want to tell folks a little bit about that background, so those who won't hear the Market Watch podcast?
Yeah, I think, sure. I basically came from public markets. So specifically options education. I basically came to the conclusion after a number of years that no retail investor should know what gamma, theta, vega, rho ever means, because it means a lot to an options portfolio manager, but to a really sophisticated individual trader, maybe we shouldn't be so short-term and reactive, which may be the story here with tariffs, inventory costs and things. I don't know. We'd have to talk about it.
Yeah. And so I think, what we do is share what we know. And so in that way, I don't feel like we're being reactive as much as we're just kind of sharing whatever the latest information is we have, and let dealers, in this case, that's mostly our audience, is going to be buy here, pay here, and lease here, pay here dealers. Just put information in front of them, let them make decisions for themselves about, what feels right for them. But with that, let me just kind of share the thread that I put together with ChatGPT. It's interesting. I've been working more with DeepSeek, Alan. I kind of like it, but I discovered in looking at that DeepSeek, for whatever reason, on this thread was working from some kind of outdated information. And so but so ChatGPT found something a little more
current.
So I don't know, Michelle, if we can make that any more prominent.
Right
maybe
there. We're not going to be in the screen.
Or you can try that other one where we can.
So do you want me to read the question and you can read the answer? Okay. So in the next 1 to 3 years, what is the outlook of experts regarding the impact of tariffs on used car prices in the U.S.? Great question, Jim.
Thank you. I'm kind of learning a little bit about the prompts, and I speak.
We're learning.
Yeah, but So what's particularly interesting about this one is that it says over the next 1 to 3 years, experts anticipate that U.S. tariffs, the T word, on imported vehicles and auto parts will significantly impact used car prices, primarily due to increased demand and constrained supply, which is not a new thing, which, by the way, what we're talking about here is not just buy here, pay here. When we talk about the used car segment, obviously those dealers that are doing used car retail, they would be affected by these things as well, which obviously trickles down and impacts the buy here, pay here dealer. And obviously what happens in the new car side obviously impacts as well. So there's some talk about that as we move into this. In fact, this first one says, key factors influencing prices. Let me get over here where I can run this thing a little differently. So key factors influencing used car prices. Tariffs on new vehicles and parts. The 25% tariffs imposed on imported vehicles and auto parts are expected to raise new car prices by $4,000 to $12,000. The increase is likely to push more consumers toward the used car market, thereby elevating demand and prices in that segment.
I have a comment.
Okay. Go.
Yeah, this is not my world, but this is, it's like I pay attention to some of the stuff people are talking about on social. And I've heard things that new vehicle franchises, Ford, whatever, and I don't know which ones they're talking about. We're lowering our prices to kind of offset what we expect to be happening, so that the consumer isn't going to be seeing the same price on a car. But they're going to have it. It's like an employee whatever discount thing, so that it will help offset the pocketbook of the consumer.
And Michelle told me about that, Alan, and I said, I'm not impressed. Like, I've seen them offer employee prices on TV ads in the past. So, that sounds more like a promotion than anything else to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's Ford, right, Michelle?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched it to the end, and then there was a disclaimer. They're like, yeah, except for the Super Duty trucks, and by the way, the Expedition, and I don't know about the Explorer,
the high priced vehicles.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm like, well, I mean, I love trucks. I love big trucks. That's what I'm like. Oh, of course you're not going to offer it on what I want to buy, but on the edge, okay, it makes sense. I guess.
Well, would you, knowing that, your average American, would you choose a different vehicle based on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to, right? I mean, at some point, we all fit wherever we fit in, like the strata of society. We may all have to make concessions that, the 8,000 ton Suburban isn't the most cost effective vehicle on the planet, or whatever for us.
Well, and I see that there's like, this is not the same thing, but it's like we just are pulling ourselves out of the same constriction that we experienced during COVID, and it's just haven't fully rebounded, and we're, they're expecting skin. So let's move to two.
Actually, before we move too much further, it reminds me of something that came up in our conversation last night, Alan, with the dealers. And I would be interested in kind of your feedback around this part. It's like one of the things that we're seeing as, here we are in early 2025, COVID hit us in 20. It still was hitting us hard in 21 in a lot of ways. And so, one of the things that I have shared, just kind of from a big picture, like zoom way out and look at, used car prices and the buy here, pay here segment. And it felt like to me that in 21 and just through that stretch, used car prices shot through the roof. Yeah. What didn't shoot through the roof was the customer's ability to put a down payment or their ability to make a regular payment. So what that meant to dealers is they were running up prices to make sure they had enough margin in their deals. And so now you ended up with long contracts and or high payments, or some combination there. And it just felt like, where's the tail on that? Because I remember thinking back then, this is probably not sustainable. There's going to come a kind of a day of reckoning. Don't want to sound alarmist, but it's like there's going to be a day of adjustment on this. And it feels like, to me, it's, again, wide view, it feels like we should have experienced that already. Now, we had some of our people say in the meeting last night that accountants are saying that 2024 was the hardest year on buy here, pay here they've seen. Okay, so I haven't seen those numbers coming in on the financials, but if you just look at it pure, and I think P&Ls and balance sheets aren't the best way to really measure, the success of a buy here, pay here operation. It can give you a snapshot look, but it's not necessarily the best health barometer. So I just kind of want to hear your perspective on the timing of that. Like, how much of what we're experiencing now, do you feel like, are we still in a post-COVID tail or not?
No, I actually do not think we are in a post-COVID tail. And here's my thought process, and there's some data to support it on the nerdy side. When you look at these portfolios, particularly in deep subprime and particularly in buy here, pay here, the life cycle of a portfolio is only about a few years. And so if you looked at some high price, high interest rate environment loans from 2022, really by the end of 2024, that's made its way through. In fact, being more selective, if our average contract in the space is 48 months, the majority of our losses of those portfolios are in the first 12 months.
Yeah.
Right? And so those that are left over, and we'll say left over, let's be honest, those are solid gold in buy here, pay here. If you have a 2022 loan today on 4/11/2025, you need to figure out a way to keep that consumer, and they're great because they've managed to navigate from a personal financial responsibility some pretty difficult economic times.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
So those are, in my mind, the COVID tail, if you will, in buy here, pay here is over. Where it's not over is you will see that in particularly in like the deep subprime securitization. So like I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and so you'll see these stories, right? I get texts like 10 times a day from guys. Hey, have you read this story? Have you read this story? And I get this pop, and they're like, wow, delinquency is popping and this and that. Also in buy here, pay here, this is something that maybe others haven't thought about, but I had a really interesting discussion Wednesday night at dinner with a pretty high profile buy here, pay here dealer. And what we were talking about was modifications. In securitizations, you can actually modify a contract numerous times. Okay. But if you go back to a lot of the principal agreements within buy here, pay here, so whether that's bank, non-depository financial institution who lends warehouse facilities in this space, they're really, really, really restrictive. Having had a few myself, they're pretty restrictive relative to modifications. When you go look at securitizations in the deep subprime, I mean, they're modifying maybe 2 times, 3 times a year. And they're also modifying as many as 6 to 8 times per the lifetime of the contract. So, that what that does is that extends the tail in deep subprime, right? So, Mrs. Smith, extends in 23, and then she does it in 24, and it just kind of kicks the can a little bit. And so I think that tail in subprime is definitely still exists and has to be worked through. But I think in the buy here, pay here, for the majority of the portfolios out there, the pain is pretty much done. In fact, if you go look at your portfolio by vintage, just look at it by quarter or year, and just run your principal balance that you have outstanding just by vintage, you'll see pretty quickly you probably don't have a lot left from. Right. In fact, I would say you have very little left from 21, if anything, and you have very little left from 2022.
Yeah. So I want you to recount a phrase that you used there. A non-depository, what did you call them?
Non-depository financial institution.
Okay, got it. I think I know who he's talking about, but it's all right. I just want to.
I don't.
So the typical warehouse players, right? So that falls into private investors, private groups that provide debt in the space.
Okay.
or, and they're all the same names we know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's not that many in
There's
that
just a
space.
few.
But then you
We don't-
have, go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Oh, we don't typically name names over here. We can. Everybody knows who we're
No,
talking
no.
about. It's like, no,
I'm staying away from names.
yeah.
But then you also have, and you could think of these also like credit funds, right? So everybody kind of hears, if they pay attention to some of the market private credit, it's getting big, right? Like Apollo, KKR, and I'll use their names because they're $20 bazillion credit funds. But those would be all classified as non-depository financial institutions.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yep. So I was just curious about that part. I think, as we dig into this, I'll stop to say that, we probably won't get through the whole thread on this ChatGPT thing.
Well,
So anybody
we've
who's
covered different parts of it just in the conversation.
Yeah. So you might throw up
Yeah.
my email over there, Michelle, and anybody who wants the full thread, just email
Absolutely.
me and I'll happily give it to them.
I have to say, one of the things you mentioned in the last little bit of an explanation of your thoughts around the market is I remember sitting in your office and talking about, for paper dealers, it's like the prime, if you can get it past 12 months or 18 months, it's like, there is your window. If you can manage that account that long, that's gold. That's gold right there.
It really is. If you can get them to 12 months, the majority of the losses are done and it's smooth sailing. Well, I mean, relative smooth sailing, but
smoother.
Smoother. When you look at like when these portfolios kind of have their max charge off by vintage, if you do it kind of by month, it's somewhere. And I haven't seen any buy here, pay here, and I've looked at hundreds that doesn't have that max loss between like month 6 and month 9. Like those months, that third quarter after origination is just like terror. Like it's awful. It's very stressful.
Yeah. So Alan's, he's basically saying on the scatter graph, which you know what that is.
Yes,
right?
I do.
So on a scatter graph, you can see where the peaks are. So let's a lot fewer dots on the graph after you get past that. So going on into our thread there, let me get back over there so I can scroll up. So it talks about obviously the parts which we touched on, supply constraints. The used car market is already experiencing limited inventory due to reduced new vehicle production. So, we're still kind of on the after effects of that part. With fewer off-lease vehicles and trade-ins, the supply of used cars remains tight. So again, we think about that from the top down. We saw in COVID that new car dealers couldn't get inventory, so they were buying heavily on used cars, which meant the used car dealer down the street was having to pay more if they could get any inventory at all, which obviously trickles down to the buyer.
So are we thinking that this, all of the stuff with what's happening in tariffs and all of that we're going to have like the first cousin of what happened during COVID, where it's like,
and listen, I'm saying I'm not prognosticating over here. I'm reading what AI
Alan,
says.
did you not appreciate that cough?
I mean, don't ever say it out loud, Michelle.
Yeah. So I'm no expert. You talk about, you kind of defend yourself as not being an expert. I'm not trying to be an expert here. I'm trying to read, with somebody who has a little, can connect some dots based on our perspective. I'm just trying to read what the stuff says, because I think we're not trying to be prognosticators here. We're just trying to,
I'm looking at this too, and it's saying fewer off-lease vehicles and trade-ins available. Does that mean because of what has been happening in economy for the last so many years, people are holding on to them longer? Or, they're not trading in, they're just buying because they don't want to, like, a repeat of what happened to them before.
Doesn't say, but it references an article in Car and Driver where you can go for more detail. Okay. Like all this stuff it references like 30 some odd different sources on the thing. So you can go get more of the detail. But increased repair costs. So tariffs on imported auto parts are expected to raise repair and maintenance costs. As a result, consumers may delay trading in their vehicles, further reducing the availability of used cars and contributing to higher prices. So again, this is ChatGPT pulling together from
it's amazing
mounds mountains of information, right? And it's kind of how it's
stuff.
arriving at this. So, and then I'll finish this one out, and then we'll get some feedback from Alan. So, consumer behavior surveys indicate that a significant number of Americans are postponing vehicle purchases due to anticipated price hikes and higher interest rates. This behavior could lead to a surge in demand for used cars once consumers re-enter the market, putting additional upward pressure on prices. Now, there's nothing here that talks about exactly the impact of economy, the economy, the price of eggs. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of problems in, at least my cursory view of the news, Alan. I don't see a lot of problems with employment in this country. I think folks are mostly
we're
employed.
Still like at 4%.
Yeah, we're very well employed, which I always say that's one of the things in my experience that if something's going to hurt us in buy here, pay here, it's going to be, losing a lot of local employment. That can obviously take away car payments and become a problem. But there's nothing in what I just read there that kind of talks about those elements currently. And again, I'm asking for a 1 to 3 year outlook, right, in this projection. But thoughts on what we read there?
Yeah, I actually disagree. On number 4, I would disagree with higher interest rates. What really smashed in my mind buy here, pay here dealers with the COVID is you had higher inventory costs, higher recon costs, and a number of those factors. But you also had interest rates going ballistic, right?
Amen. Yep.
They went from, we thought free money was a forever thing to holy cow. I went and bought a new car during COVID. When used car prices were high, I got rid of my used car, got max value, and bought a new car. But compared to my other truck, it was like 600 basis points higher rate, right? So I think the saving grace here in the macro environment for the next few years is looking at the forward pricing curve of SOFR, which is the standard overnight rate. With the Fed funds, and I don't think that anyone's really pricing that to go ballistic again, which gives some comfort and financial cover to buy here, pay here dealers, because in theory, we shouldn't face the same, hey, my operating interest expense on my operating statement went from, 300,000 to 3 million. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they should have a little more cash to be able to soften some of the expenses that we certainly anticipate to rise.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, we've certainly seen that dealers have had to navigate a pretty difficult stretch just based on the 3 kind of points that you brought forward right there. Is like, it's been a period of pretty substantial adjustment for buy here, pay here. And I think what that typically does, in my experience, being more of an operations guy, is like, it puts pressures on efficiencies. Like a business, if it's not very efficient, then it starts to have all these added costs, and it really applies pressure to an operation. And it, in a lot of cases, we hope it causes them to go get more efficient and make sure that they're managing their business. And I don't find it necessary to say very often, Alan, but we meet these dealers who we'll ask the question. Sometimes I've finished a presentation in a room and I'll say, are you running your business, or is your business running you? Or do you own your business, or does your business own you? And it really is this is the stuff where it starts to really separate. We have to manage our way through this, right? We have to really take ownership of it, find a way there. And last night's V8 meeting, I got to tell you, Michelle, was a really good indication where dealers are looking hard at expenses and where can I cut recon costs, or they're trying to figure out how can I get leaner and healthier. And I think that's appropriate.
Well, I mentioned before, I mean, this isn't first cousin, whatever, but it's another thing, another speed bump or whatever. And in life, I'll bring this down to, this is my shtick. If you don't learn from past experiences, then you're doomed to experience the same negative effects. And so what did we learn from COVID And how can we apply what we learned to this? We've seen a lot of dealers that chose not to learn anything, and they've been the ones that have hurt or shuttered their doors.
Yeah.
And so what have we learned, which I love with your V8 group? It's like, okay, we see this thing coming. What do we do now? Because COVID, I mean, that was not something that people really expected, but it's like, we can see that there's something coming. What did we learn from the last one? What can we change this time and do better and have, a very different kind of, the experience, even if the factors are similar, the experience can be different because you learned from the last one.
Right. And I think, Alan, what we're seeing is like, I'm not an alarmist. Like people know I'm pretty level, and I'm pretty even. And so I try to kind of keep it, pretty steady. And I think, but what we are seeing, and I've shared on the podcast, I've shared it in our V8 meetings, what we are seeing as coaches who, work with dealers and our V8 members across the country, is like, we are seeing lenders take a different posture in the and maybe more specifically the non-depository folks that you're talking about.
Do you need a little sticky note like you have here for me for the CFPB because I can never get the acronym right?
Yeah, let's get one of those. No, I just love this expression. I'm usually calling them private lenders or whatever, but
private lenders.
Yeah,
it works. It works.
Yeah, it works. Yeah. So anyway, the idea is that we're seeing at the point of renewal, there's a lot more pressure being applied where they're looking hard at profitability. Whereas, dealers used to just go through that thing and sign a new renewal every year. It's like, there's a lot more scrutiny at that point of the renewal where, where they're looking at advance rates, they're looking at profitability in a closer way than they used to. Some of what I'm hearing is really curious. And so I think it's just an example where we want to make sure that we're healthy, that we have good margins. And then from a white hat way perspective, Alan, we're asking our dealers, look, just communicate, like just make sure that you are in communication, that you have, that you're transparent with what you're doing and that that's the part that we just ask them, keep in touch. Like,
and that's the thing that, we've talked about this. It's like, what do you expect from your customer?
Cash communication.
Communication. And so it's like, do the same thing for people that you're their customer.
Right.
It's like,
So let's get back to the inventory thing. And then you and I on the Market Watch conversation, we're going to continue to kind of go through a lot of these pieces, but and I'll kind of, we can start to wind down here and I just let folks find the rest of this, online or what have you. But the kind of the outlook, it says, if tariffs remain in place, used car prices are expected to continue rising over the next few years. Analysts predict that prices for popular used models could increase by 900 to about 5,000, and depending on the vehicle and market conditions. The combination of higher new car prices, limited used car inventory, and increased repair costs create a challenging environment for consumers seeking affordable transportation, which obviously you could replace that with it's challenging for dealers as well, who are trying to, maintain some degree of profitability. And they're always balancing reward to risk when they're out there buying cars and reconditioning cars and so on. And so I think, by the way, I think the DeepSeek thread really didn't predict an increase in price, but it predicted no decrease in price. It basically said based on the market conditions, there's nothing to really foresee that it would decrease any, was really kind of the outcome from that.
So like we've decreased as much as we're going to decrease from the thing that happened a couple of years ago, and it's not going to be decreasing.
It's not going to be improving is basically what it said.
Yeah.
And so, this is just hard math. And look, this can be, there's a lot of different factors here. But as we said, one of the things that came up last night, Al, is I used to, as a dealer, there would be times that as either managing, a store or having my own dealership for about 7 years, there were times that car costs would adjust. Sometimes seasonally, tax refund season certainly puts pressure on used car prices jump. We're just coming off of that here in April. But I would say that one of the things that we would say is that, because I never was a car guy, right? I've been in the business since 95, but I'm really more of a numbers financial guy. And it's a financial aspect for me. It's a cash flow risk to reward thing. And a car just happens to be what we finance. And so my point was, look, when car costs adjust, I have to now, because I'm going to be disciplined about my model, I now have to buy a car with a little more miles, maybe a few more dents on it in order to keep it my financial model, right? I have to stay disciplined to my financial model. And so that's part of what we're encouraging dealers to kind of be watchful about and be prepared to make some adjustment, because the math has got to make sense in the end. It's got to support the financial strategy and the whole business plan. And so I think this is where we just got to be watchful and see, kind of what's going to happen there. But thoughts on what we covered there? I'll jump back into it just a minute, but go ahead, Alan.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, data is great. We can nerd out on data and look at really cool charts and all of these things. But at the end of the day, what's the actionable intelligence that you take away from that conversation? And knowing the data is different than creating an insight to what you should be doing. There's not a lot of elasticity or, there's not a lot of bandwidth for these consumers. They don't have $4,000 for a new engine and a tranny and all of those kind of things. They just don't have it. And so what should our reaction be to these increased costs, hard costs, and they're real cash costs, right? Relative to our business and buy here, pay here. And I think that comes back to policy and procedure. What is your policy and how well are you adhering to that policy? And maybe you need to change some things. For example, maybe your business model can't take more risk from a financial perspective. Good. Maybe you need to require a little bit more down payment. Maybe your modification policy isn't very lenient, and maybe it should be. And what data do you have within your portfolio to support that position?
Good.
Maybe you need to tighten underwriting standards. Maybe you need to, if you do those three things, right, you tighten underwriting standards, you reduce maybe your average loan terms, not increase them, because that's not always the best in this space, right? I just saw I literally just saw it this morning. There's a tick up in car loans in the new car space. It's over 84 months.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So, maybe we want to keep terms where they are, maybe compress them a little bit, require a little bit more down payment so we don't have so much cash and exposure in the deal. But what that really then does is it shrinks your addressable market.
Yeah.
And I think it would be really cool, and maybe one day, wink, wink, nod, nod, we'll be able to do this. Jim, and Michelle, we'll be able to look back and go, hey, what did the dealers do that maybe didn't sell as many cars during COVID?
Right.
I mean, I know lenders want you to sell cars. You want to sell cars because that's how you make your money, is through the cash flows of those loans. But what if you just didn't?
Right.
Maybe it would have been better. Maybe it would have been better. So,
I can add, kind of again, bringing around the white hat element of this. All the things that you said are perfectly relevant. I would add one: spend more time with your customers, engage the customers that you have, hold their hand if you need to, keep them, in their cars, keep them, support them so that we're not losing the customers that we already have on the books. And that lets you, because we always say, Alan, saving an account is the same thing as selling a car in my mind. It's like, if we save that payment stream, it's the same thing as creating a new sale. In fact, it costs us less, right? So I would say, let's focus on that. Let's support our customers, and if we have to take a little pause, in our sales, and to focus on getting some of those systems in place to better support the customers that we have, then I think that would serve us as well as any of those kind of things. And certainly on the front end of all the things that you mentioned, are going to make a difference as well. But I think this is where we want to try to urge dealers to look at all the elements, and some of those will be less tangible. Like, it won't show up in the graphs in the same way that, a lot of the things that we're talking about here. So I just think it's an appropriate time for, dealers to be especially mindful of getting healthy. And some of those things that factor into health, to me, are not necessarily, going to show up on the balance sheet.
And a human side, it's a time to come together and work together instead of building walls to protect yourself. It's time to work together. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, any closing thoughts, Alan? We probably should wrap up there. And you and I, like I said, I've already recorded one on the Market Watch. I think there's a lot of developments that we'll have plenty to talk about. But I look forward to having you, come back as a regular returning guest on that. We'll continue this conversation. But anything else for today?
No, not really. Just basically look at your policies and processes. Look at your historical data performance. Dig into some of that stuff. If you're not in the V8 group, why not? Give yourself some comparative benchmark. Like, I mean, I sit in this office, right? And sometimes it feels like an echo chamber. And I, having been, sitting in my office in Austin years ago, I felt like I was sitting in an echo chamber. And I'm like, well, am I convincing myself, or who am I convincing here? Get your data, get some perspective, join a group, do something that helps you make better decisions, and don't necessarily go off gut all the time. Right. Look back on that data and let it guide you. Yeah.
Amen.
We say all the time that, don't assume, measure.
Right.
Yeah. Don't assume, measure. And we watch different people that it's like, well, I assumed this, and then we did a measurement, and it's like, well, my assumption was not correct.
And I think, I say the same thing in a different way. Like, I think we're in 2025. There's lots of tools out there. We can move beyond opinion. Right. We can go find the data to support what we're setting out to do. And it's out there, and people can do 20 groups, they want something more intensive, and they can certainly do
V8 groups is a great way to get your feet in the water of really understanding what it is that's happening with your portfolio.
Yeah. And I'll renew the offer today, Michelle, that folks out there who want to get a free portfolio analysis, we've got a little template that we can provide. Yeah. So just email me at the jim@whitehatway.com email, and we'll provide you that template so that people can kind of throw in their historical data, and then we'll do a free analysis and give comparisons to the V8 folks. So that's probably enough for today. Shall we let Alan get back to his work, and we'll get back to our own?
Alan, if you wouldn't mind just sticking around for a minute so we can say a proper goodbye after we've closed out the podcast.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you so much for joining
us. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You bet.
Great conversation. All right.
I like hanging around with smart people.
I do too. Yeah. And even though I have to say, okay, what does that mean? Yeah. Please explain to me, because I don't. Yeah. I'm married in.
Listen, I've been at this for 20 plus years, and I'm still learning every day. Right? There's stuff to learn and know. It's like,
well, yeah, it's there is. All right. It is Friday, everybody. Oh my goodness. Out enjoying the blossoms, the whatever, and just, breathe in I've been stuck in my house for the last 4 months air.
Yeah.
So
some folks in the southern part of the country, they've been at this already for a while.
Well, we lived in Florida, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, we're the ones that are thawing out in northern Utah here. All
right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We know that you have a lot on your plate already, and you get to give us the time to listen to, us talk about things that we just get excited about. And again, thank you so much for Alan for joining us. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you on Wednesday for another
F word.
Another F word about fear for our White Hat Wednesday. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.